Greetings, welcome to another episode of Bobolog. I really appreciate you tuning in again. So thank you to anyone who is coming back and has watched previous episodes, and a very warm welcome and thank you to any new viewers who may be tuning in. My name is Bobolog. I am a knitter and sometimes multi-crafty maker living in Victoria, Australia. More specifically, I live and create on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, and I'd like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal peoples across Australia. It is quite warm here today, and I did have the fan on earlier, but it just made too much noise, so I'm just going to be using the hand fan a bit. I hope that's not too distracting in the video. I'm not sure if you can see it because I don't have a monitor that allows me to see what's being filmed because I'm just using my phone. So to get started, the first thing I want to say is just a little correction from the last episode. I had purchased some yarn from an Aussie yarn store called Hand Make Create, and I said that I thought that they were in Queensland, but that's wrong. They're actually in New South Wales. So sorry about that, Tash, if you're watching. But Hand Make Create is a store in New South Wales, and they have a lovely selection of yarns as well as a few knitting tools that I haven't seen anywhere else. For example, that's where I bought my Leica circular knitting needles in, I think the length I got was 100 centimeters, and I have only seen 80 centimeters elsewhere, and I think they even had longer lengths when I was shopping, but I didn't want to go too extreme unless I knew I had a need. So since I have filmed the last episode, you can see that I've got a haircut. Sadly, that's probably one of the most exciting things going on in my life at the moment. My partner and I are still being very cautious and trying not to go out and do anything unless we have to, so a haircut for me was still pretty exciting. I went to a new hairdresser, new to me hairdresser in Mount Waverley, and he tried to explain how I can sort of style and maintain and manage waves, because I don't want curls, and I all of the curly girl stuff is just a bit too much effort for me, but as you can see, I'm not being very successful doing it myself so far. But anyway, what else have I been up to since I saw you last? I did have an appointment at the osteo. I go to my osteo every 1 to 2 months, and he mostly works on my arm issues, but a few other bodily issues I have here and there. But he did explain one thing about my elbow problems that he's probably explained before and I just didn't take it in. But he said that, so I have pains on the inside of the elbow, and I also have pains on the outside of the elbow. More often I have the inner elbow pains, and I've never really understood what causes them. I'd always just accepted them as part of knitting, but I do try to manage them by going to the osteo and by trying to do stretches and things. But he said that the inner one comes from gripping, and I know that I do hold on to my needles pretty tightly sometimes when I'm focusing and I'm concentrating. I just tend to like sort of clench up, and like I'm trying to be aware of that and trying to loosen up my grip, but sometimes working with smaller needles especially, that is hard. And then the outer one, the outer elbow pain, he says comes from this action, which makes a lot of sense because I've really, that's something else since I finished reading Knitting Comfortably by Carson Demers. I've made an effort to have this line straight when I'm knitting, but it is very hard and I can't help but, you know, flex my wrist back like that. So that obviously makes a lot of sense too, why there are those two pains on the elbow there at opposite ends of the elbow. So knowing now what causes them, I do want to try to be a bit more aware if I start feeling one of those pains while I'm knitting, to either loosen my grip or to stop moving or stop flexing my wrist as much. So that was an interesting tidbit from going to the osteo a few weeks ago. What else have I been up to? If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that I attempted doing Instagram reels for the first time. They're very fiddly, and the timing especially I found very difficult to get right, but they were kind of fun to do. I did also try a YouTube short, but that one, there are just some, the adding music, adding audio to that I found quite tricky. So my first and only YouTube short so far is silent, but I've done 2 Instagram reels and 1 YouTube short, and yeah, they were a lot trickier than I had expected. I think the YouTube short took me like half a day, I'm embarrassed to say, but we'll see if I keep going with those. But if you're interested in checking them out, obviously you can find the YouTube one on my Platypus Knitting channel, and on Instagram I am also at Platypus Knitting. You can also find me on Ravelry under my own name at Bobolog, and I would love to hear from any of you who are watching me. Just drop a line and say hello or comment on the video below. I'd really love to hear from you. I think that's everything of note that I wanted to say that I've been up to since the last episode. In the last episode, I did mention a blanket that I thought I had featured last year as an eye candy item, but since I didn't, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it now. So that is the Star Illusion blanket by Katie Alquist. You can find that blanket and proper spelling of her name, because I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. You can find that in the YouTube description below. I also have a blog site where I put transcripts of the episodes and links to everything that I'm talking about as well. So you can find a link to the Star Illusion blanket there. So it is a free pattern, and I selected it because there have been a couple of new babies this year, so I wanted to knit baby items, obviously, and usually I mainly do like little garments for them, but I wanted to try something different, and I was searching around for patterns, and I remembered that I had heard about, I think it can be called illusion knitting. I think it can also be called shadow knitting, but it's basically a magical type of knitting where if you're looking at the design front on, you can't really see what it is. You're just seeing stripes of color. But if you look at it from an angle, then you can see what the design is. So that's something that I've been intrigued in since I heard about it last year, but I haven't had a reason to knit something using that technique. So when I started looking at possible baby blankets, I realized this is the perfect opportunity to give that technique a go. So I had a look on Ravelry and filtered by blankets. I think I filtered by age, and by the attribute shadow slash illusion, and there weren't that many out there, which I'm glad of. Sometimes it doesn't mean I'm scrolling pages and pages and pages, because I'm the type of person who has to look at every single option. FOMO, basically. I don't want to miss out. What if there was an amazing pattern on page 75 that I would have missed if I only looked at the first 5 pages? So I was glad that with all of those filters there weren't that many to choose from, but I really liked this Star Illusion one by Katie Alquist. So last week I unwrapped a couple of different yarn packages, and one of them was a whole lot of sheep use yarn from Belmay Yarns here in Victoria, an online yarn store here in Victoria. And I had selected their Whirl Fine Art, which is a gradient yarn that is, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the percentages, but I think it's merino, microfiber and acrylic, I think. But they are beautiful gradient yarns, really big balls of yarn that are themed, or the colorways are based on art movements, and then they have matching single balls, normal sized balls of the same base in a solid color that either matches, that will match one end or both. I'm really bad at explaining. So it's a gradient yarn, and you can get separate little balls that will match either the outside or the inside of the gradient. That's what I'm trying to say. And not every gradient cake has a match for both the inside and the outside. So I got 2 different colorways of the Sheep Year's Whirl Fine Art, a blue one and a yellow one, and the yellow one only had a match for the outside of the cake, so I got 2 extra of the merino soft balls to match that, and the blue one had a match for both the inside and the outside, so I got 1 of each. And that gave me a little bit more than enough meterage according to what the pattern says it needs. I am not planning to do a gauge swatch for this one because it's a blanket and I'm pretty on gauge, so I'm just going to go by the recommended needles from the yarn and just work the blanket, and fingers crossed that I have enough yarn. And if I don't, then it's great that they have those extra little balls that you can just tack on that will match the ends of the gradients. So I'm looking forward to starting that Star Illusion blanket. That will probably be my next cast on after I have finished at least one of these other projects that I have on the go. I don't like having too many works in progress on the go, so I do want to finish probably at least the socks. I'm nearly finished the socks, so yeah, that's the Star Illusion blanket. And since I have mentioned the socks, then I guess I will start talking about those. So these 2 that you can see hanging up here, they are my personal versions 3 and 4 of the August Sock KAL, the August Sock Knit Along by Roxanne Richardson. So I've mentioned this in the previous episode, but this is basically one of those, the pattern is basically one of those recipes, booklet type things. There are like 5 PDFs when you go to buy the pattern, and they go through different fit issues that you can have when knitting a cuff down sock, and different techniques that that you can use in constructing your sock, and all the different calculations for making a sock that fits your foot. So I read all of the PDFs and then I came up with 5 different combinations that I wanted to try out, and I'm knitting them all for my partner. They are in a discontinued yarn by Wendy, which I'm really sad that they are discontinued because I've really enjoyed working them. Interestingly, they are a bamboo sock yarn. So I forgot to bring the label. I'm just going to go grab it now. So they are knit in Wendy Happy, which is that there. That's the yarn label there. So like I said, that it is now discontinued. I think it was discontinued when I bought the yarn. I bought it from one of my local yarn stores here in Melbourne a few years ago, and they've kind of just been sitting in stash until I found this August Sock KAL through Roxanne Richardson's vlog. So yes, it's a bamboo nylon sock yarn. It's got quite a lot of stretch to it, which I was very surprised and pleased to find. So they're quite comfortable to work with, and the socks have a lot of give, which is excellent, a lot of elasticity. I bought 3 balls, and it's going to be enough to make 5 pairs of ankle socks for my partner, which is pretty great. I didn't necessarily plan it so that I'd use up all of the yarn to get the 5 versions. It just so happens that I wanted to make 5 different versions of socks, and after I knit the first 3, so 1 in each colorway, I had enough left over to mix and match the rest to make the other 2, which is great because then I can compare all of the socks and they are all on the same yarn base, so that it makes for an easier comparison, I guess. So version 3, this one here, I had, in the previous episode, I had knit 1 sock and I had knit the cuff of the second sock. So I'll just show you here. This one, I thought I would try doing a shaped toe. So this one is for the right foot, and the other one that's on the sock blocker there is shaped like that, so for the left foot. So I'm just kind of interested to see if that's going to fit and wear better than just a normal wedge or a normal round toe where the top of the toe is centered. The thing about that is I did find, I did side-by-side decreases, and I don't know if it would just work better if I did a more traditional wedge toe where it has like a panel there, but I did find on this, on the longer side of decreases, it was quite holy and gappy. So when I wove in the ends on the inside, I kind of zigzagged down that sort of seam line to try to hide the holes, and I think that has worked quite well, but it is still a really visible seam, but you can't see my skin through there anymore. So that worked in that sense, but I think if I were to try shaped toes again, I wouldn't do side-by-side decreases. I'd either do center double decreases or I'd do the traditional wedge that leaves a panel there. I think I didn't want to do the panel because there weren't going to be as many decreases on one side. I thought the panel wouldn't be as obvious and it would look odd but I reckon I'll just try it for the next time. Anyway, so what else can I tell you about this sock? This sock, the cast on that I used was the alternating cable cast on, which I quite liked. I think it looks pretty good. It's a bit on the fiddlier side for me personally. I found it a bit fiddlier to do, but I think it looks quite good. It's sort of tubular and it's pretty easy to work up. The other thing about this sock is the stripes didn't match up perfectly. So if I can hold it there, I mean, it's really hard to tell because it does look kind of well matched there, but you can see here, this stripe goes along around the whole foot, and on this sock here, it is only on the heel and then just one tiny little bit of it that goes around the whole foot. So because I wasn't knitting these at the same time, that I had a lot less control over that. I don't mind too much, really. It's not that obvious a difference, and it's still, you know, it ends on the same color. It still like follows the same striping sequence. So I did consider for a while tinking back, but then I was looking at the other colors that came before it, and the orange is the same length, the brown is the same length, and then it's the pink that is different. So that one is just not quite matching up. Yeah, so these are also the first socks that I have ever done a short row heel on. So these are the German short row heels. I thought, you know, they were all right. I didn't have any real issues working them, and I think they look quite good. One thing that I had wanted to do, but I wasn't sure I would have enough yarn because I was trying to make all of this stretch to make 5 different socks, is I wanted, because these heels are sort of just plain stockinette in a sense, and they don't have that extra sort of layer of reinforcement that slip stitch heels give you, I would have liked to be able to hold another strand of yarn with it, and sort of have it like a double layer. But like I said, I was worried that I would run out of yarn, so I didn't do that for these. And also, it's the first time I was doing them. I just wanted to see how they would work as they are. So I do think they look, I do think short row heels look really good, so I'm sure I will be making those again. Yeah, so that is my version 3 of the custom fit socks. So this colorway is the Gemini colorway. It's quite a long repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Would you call that 6? Would you call that 6 stripes? I'm not counting that. That's just like one row. 5 or 6 stripe repeat, and as you can see, they're all different lengths stripes. So that's my version 3 there. I also managed to finish version 4. Where did I put this? Oh, it's in my lap. So version 4 is knit in a combination of, oh, whoops, what have I done here? I haven't woven in the ends, oops. It's knit in a combination of the Taurus colorway and then the zebra colorway. So the zebra is on the heel, and then I ran out of the Taurus colorway, and so had to use the zebra for the second half of the toes. So these ones, they are, what did I do here? So I did these, I knew it was a bad idea before I set out doing them, but I did it anyway. I did the Italian tubular cast on for knitting socks, for knitting 2 socks at a time on magic loop. And it was just a bit of a nightmare, making sure nothing was twisted, and rearranging everything so that, you know, it was like set up for magic loop properly, and it was just not fun. I like the Italian tubular cast on, but not for working things 2 at a time, definitely not. And it does look a bit like loose, like it looks a bit, it's not, I mean, you don't want a cast on that's pulling in, but you also don't want a cast on that's like flaring out, and I feel like that's flaring out a bit, so it's not the best. Yeah, I don't think I'd use that for socks again. Totally fine working 1 item in the round possibly, but definitely I have used it when I've worked a sweater flat in pieces, and that was totally fine. It looked and worked great for that, and would probably be great for something like a shawl or a blanket as well, but not for socks. The other thing that I did with these is, so with this sock, I tried one of Roxanne Richardson's techniques for improving the transition from ribbing to stockinette. So this one used a slip stitch method. And with this one, I tried the other method that she had, which uses knit one below, but because I was so set on doing all of the socks the same number of rows for the cuff, the same number of rows for the heel, sorry, not the heel, for the leg, and just, you know, getting all of my lengths and everything the same. The cuff ended at a color change, and because it was one of those color changes that is just the length of 1 row, and because the transition was using a knit one below, it just made it really messy, and you cannot see, you can't make it out. It just makes it look sloppy, which is really unfortunate. But I'd like to try that method again some other time when I'm working in a single color yarn, because with this one, the leg changed colors 1 or 2 rows in, and I think because that transition between the cuff and the leg is all in the same color, you can see it really clearly, and I'm sure this one works just as well. On her video it works, they both work just as well as each other, but here it just looks sloppy, so it was just the wrong place to do it. But yes, this one is unintentionally, it's ended up being made of all of my least favorite methods almost. So the cast on was wrong, the transition was wrong, and then I did not enjoy making this heel. This is the first time I have done a forethought heel. So you knit down the leg, you place your waste yarn, and you continue on. You continue knitting the rest of the sock, and then you go back, pick up stitches around the waste yarn, remove the waste yarn, and knit your heel, and that's the forethought heel. And I just didn't enjoy it. I just didn't find it. It was just too much fiddliness for me. I don't like having to pick up stitches. If I'm gonna have to pick up stitches, then I'll just do a heel flap and gusset, because I've never had a problem with them. I mean, it looks good, But after having done other sock methods now, if I want that kind of looking, a heel that looks like that has that sort of line, I'm again describing these really badly. I would do a short row or a plain heel and not the forethought heel. So I don't think I'll be doing that one again. I did do this one using center double decreases, as you can see, and I quite like how that looks. Tiny bit concerned about its snaggability, but I don't know, I'm sure it's fine. I like how that looks. So knit that down, and then how did I do this toe? Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted the toe to match the heel, so I just did center double decreases again. So I have none of this Taurus colorway left. I knit until I completely ran out. The other very silly thing on my part that I did with this sock is I knit my version 1 of this August Sock KAL completely in this Taurus colorway, and I somehow, they just matched perfectly. Like the stripes just matched perfectly throughout the whole sock. So when I started these ones, I knew that continuing on with those 2 balls, that I'd get matching again. But what didn't occur to me is because you can't see it with this colorway actually, but the stripe, this isn't the full striping sequence. It's actually a really long striping sequence, and I think there's meant to be a section that has like a longer purple bit than this. So when I was working this, I think it was fine up to here, and then past the heel, the one sock, the color oh goodness, the color was longer in one sock than it was on the other sock. So was that on this one? Yeah, so what I did was, on the one where it was longer, I cut a length of the color out so that the stripe would be the same length as the shorter stripe on the other sock. And I thought that would solve all my problems. I thought that would be it. But then, as I continued working, it kind of flipped. The sock that had the short stripe before now had a different color that was longer than that same color on the other sock. And because I'd already made the effort to make the stripes match once, I thought I'd do it again. So I cut out a length of that color on the second sock so that that stripe would match. And then I ended up having to, when it came back round to that color, I had to put that extra back in. Because that color then was shorter on that sock and longer on the other sock. It was such a nightmare, and I wish I hadn't bothered. I wish I had just knit and let the stripes be different colors on these socks. But because I had started, I kept going, and I was very annoyed at myself by the end of it. I mean, the end result is a matching pair of socks, which of course I am very, very happy about, but just not worth the effort, really. I should have just let them not match, but there you go. I have a very well matching pair of socks there to give to my partner. So that was my version 4 of those socks. Version 5, my last one, is still on the needles. Let me put this one down. This bowl is a bit of a tangle because I've stuffed 3 different works in progress here, but there is usually only one. Everything usually has its own yarn bowl, project bowl. So I never had a deadline for making all of these socks. It was just something that I really wanted to do and make for my partner. But last week I realized that Valentine's Day was coming up, and I knew I wouldn't have enough time to finish all of the socks for Valentine's Day. But I still tried really hard. So I am filming this actually on Valentine's Day, Monday, Valentine's Day, and all weekend I cast on these socks on Saturday morning, and I seriously, I spent all weekend knitting on them. I didn't work on anything else. I didn't do anything else basically. Well, I mean, I did do other things obviously, but I was giving all of my time to these socks here, and I came so close. I only have the toes left to go, but anyway, these ones I finally remembered to do the rib in a half twisted rib, so doing the knits, working the knits through the back loop and working the purls normally, which I had wanted to do for all of the socks but just kept forgetting. So I finally remembered, and then after all of my efforts to get that to get a nice transition between the rib and the leg, I forgot and very happily was reminded that you don't need to make any efforts at doing those kind of fiddly things for a twisted rib, because it just does it naturally. Like, look how clean that transition is. I like that there's such a defined difference between the two different sections. And twisted rib, half twisted rib, just always looks amazing. Just, it looks so good. Like, it just looks so good. I love it. I wish, I don't know why I always forget to do it, because I mean, it's not as quick and easy to do as a normal rib, but surely the more that I do it, the easier that becomes. So I've just got to remember to do it all the time, because it looks really, really good. Yeah, so, and I think that cast on that I used for this one looks amazing with it too. Like, I love how it's got a sort of, I wouldn't really call that like a picot edge, but it's kind of like a zigzaggy edge, which I think looks really nice. So that one is actually, usually when I do socks, my go-to cast on is the German twisted cast on, which is a long tail cast on. So that I did on version 1 of the socks, and it's fine. And for each of the socks I did a different cast on. So for this last one I thought I would do Tilly Buddy's very stretchy cast on, which is actually my general go-to cast on for anything. If I'm not trying to use a specific technique, I do Tilly Buddy's very stretchy cast on, because it is so easy. There is no estimating yarn tails, and it looks good with pretty much everything. It's mainly for ribbing, but it looks good with 1x1. It looks good with 2x2. It looks good with stockinette. It's stretchy, but oh my goodness, with the twisted cast on, it just looks, I just love how that looks. It just looks amazing. So I think this is going to be my new go-to. It's beautiful. Anyway, I love it. So yeah, so with this one, when I worked these socks, as I mentioned, the colors weren't quite a match. So each sock ended on the orange, but one of them used a bit more of the orange than the other. So when I started these, I pulled out all of the orange and matched up where the color change was and cut off the extra that I had, so that they would match, and they have matched perfectly. I haven't had to do any sort of other cutting or fudging to make the stripes match. they are just working beautifully. Yes. So these ones are made using the plain heel. So that's the plain heel there. So I think that's also called an Instathought heel. So you work the leg up until you're ready to do the heel, and then you put the instep stitches on waste yarn, and then you do a provisional cast on for the instep side of the heel stitches, and then you work that as you would an afterthought or a forethought heel, just working in the round and decreasing like a toe. So the excellent thing about this is with all of this custom fitting that I'm trying to do in using this pattern, this tutorial, so the thing about that I discovered about my partner's foot when I measured is that his foot circumference is a little bit wider than his ankle circumference. So for all of these socks, they've all been done with 68 stitches for the leg and 74 stitches for the foot. So the great thing with this one, with this construction, is because you're casting on for the other side of the heel, I was able to just cast on all the extra stitches I need for the foot. And so when I was finished working the heel, and I picked up the other end of the provisional cast on, I didn't need to increase any more stitches to work the foot. I could just work the foot. It was perfect. There are other calculations that go into it so that you're casting on the right number to get the right heel diagonal. But luckily for my partner, it just worked out that that it was just the right amount. It was the same amount. So I had to get the right heel diagonal, I cast on the same number of stitches that I would have needed to cast on to get the right foot circumference. That's what I'm trying to say. So that just worked out perfectly. And she has all of the calculations in this pattern. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's really informative and really great. What did I do with this heel? So when I worked this this heel, I did side-by-side decreases. So yes, I hadn't done side-by-side on the heel in any of the other socks. I had done it for the toe of the other sock there, but not for the heel, so I thought I'd try it here. And I should say as well that all of my grafting of the toes and the heels where it's needed are again using a technique that I learned from Roxanne Richardson, which is the Finchley graft. It's a little bit fiddlier to set up because of how you have to rearrange the needles, but it's so easy, and I like it a lot more than the Kitchener. I think it's just a lot easier to work aside from that setup, and it looks great. So that's the Finchley graft there. So yes, I knit like a mad woman all weekend, and I got that far. I have a million stitch markers on here because I want to try doing, so I'm going to do these ones as a round toe. So that's the one where you decrease like you do for the top of a hat. So instead of having two lines of decreases, you're kind of decreasing evenly around the whole thing on fewer rows. So I want to do that again for this, but I kind of want to try to make it shaped. It's probably not going to end up as shaped as when I did it on the wedge toe, because it's just a little fiddlier to work out. So I've placed stitch markers where the decreases need to be. So I've got two wider sections and then two narrower sections, and then on the other side 2 narrower and then 2 wider, and we'll just see how that goes. And obviously then, yeah, on the other side it's the other way around. Ooh, yeah, I've just realized that I haven't put the stitch markers so that it's the other way around. I've done them so that they're going to be going in the same direction, so I have to remember to change that before I start working those decreases. So I guess that's enough talking about those socks. The next item that I want to mention is, so last episode, I was going to say last week, but it was 2 weeks ago, last episode with all of the yarn that I unwrapped, I also had some Shape Years yarn that I had purchased to make a toy. So you can see the first adorable little hooves here. Let me try to take one out. Some of the stuffing's coming out. So that is one of the front hooves there. It's so cute. Like, I just love this detail of, like, you know, giving it the, I don't know what you call them on animals, the toe bits. I just think that looks really great. And I was a bit concerned about this color when I unwrapped it. It was pinker than I had hoped for, but I think it's looking really good. Actually, it's not looking super pink. it's tanner. And it's matching well with the fluffier yarn that I bought. So this one is Shape Years Soft Fun, and this one is Shape Years Sweetheart Soft Brush. And this I put Rocket there to show that this one is the right leg, and on this one I have Luna to so that I remember that that one is for the left leg. So let's get you back up there. So they are the front legs slash hooves, and I am working on the hind hooves, legs. Can I pull this out more? So these ones are just a little bit wider than those ones, and I believe once I have worked up, once I have finished the leg, I think I do the same thing of stuffing them and working, you know, closing this hole and making that detail of the hoof. I think then I think I'm gonna join them together and start working in the round for the body, but I haven't actually read ahead in this pattern. I'm kind of just reading what I have to do next. So hopefully that goes well and I don't run into any problems. So that's going to be the hind legs there. It's just, did I say it's the Baby Lamb pattern by Lorraine Pistorio, and all of her toys are just so adorable. They have such character. I can't wait to do the face. It's just going to be so cute. And then they you know, they sit there on their butts with their like legs sticking out and their arms sticking out, and they're really cute. They're really, really cute. I do have to say, I'm not enjoying, and I don't enjoy making toys as much as I enjoy making garments, but how it all comes together is really, really fun and exciting. Seeing all of the little details come together is really fun and exciting. So I would like to make more of her items, but we'll see when I finish this one if I can be bothered making one for myself, because I'd love to have one for myself, but we'll see if I wanted enough to take me away from knitting more garments, because that's what I really love to do. The cast on that I have used for this one, she didn't specify one in the pattern, but I have used the disappearing loop cast on. I heard about this, I think, somewhere around the end of last year, but I hadn't had a reason to use it yet. So this was the perfect opportunity. It's kind of like, if you're familiar with crocheting in the round, it's kind of doing a cast on in the same way that they do the magic loop cast on, a crocheted magic loop cast on. Yeah, which I think is really clever, and I heard about it and I saw it and I realized it was like that crochet one, and it was just like, why have I not heard of this before? Why is this only a thing now? I mean, it could have been a thing before and I'd only just heard about it, but I felt like it was everywhere for a little while. And it's just genius and obvious. So yeah, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to do that there. So let me see if I can show you how it works here. So you cast on in the round, and then once you're ready to, you just pull on the end and it closes the hole. Easy, easy peasy. I left it wide because working around it was easier to have a wider hole, but I'm going to end up closing it up anyway. So yeah, so that's that one there. Yes. So the last thing that I have on the needles is this here. So this is just the brim of a beanie, but it's looking huge for a baby, I should say. I feel like it's looking really big for a baby, but I don't know. Sometimes I think baby things look really tiny, and then sometimes I think they look really big, and I just have no sense of like how big babies are. I don't know. Will that fit I feel like that's huge. So this, I should start at the start. This is the Daniel's hat by Isolde Teague. It's a brioche beanie, and she's got it, they've got it from you know, baby right up to adult sizes. So I have made this before. I mentioned in the last episode that I'd made one for Christmas, but I had nothing to show for it because I gifted it the same day that I finished it, pretty much. Yes, but that one, I feel like that one didn't look this big. So the thing is with that, I'm using the same yarn, which is the 4 Seasons Superwash Merino, which is a discontinued yarn that I got from Spotlight. That one I did in yellow, and then this cream color. So I also made a little baby vest out of this navy blue color and this mohair, which is Lincraft's Winter Warmth mohair, which again is discontinued. This is all from Deep Stash. But when I made the vest, I made it with 2 strands of the merino and 1 strand of the mohair held together. So I am hoping, but I am not hopeful, that I have enough to finish this beanie. But if I don't, I might just undo the whole thing and make the smaller size. So the hat is written for, I think it's Aran weight or worsted weight, but I'm using DK. So I'm using the numbers for the toddler size to get the baby size, which is what I did when I made this before, but this just feels big. So if it does come out too big, or you know, if it comes out too big, or if I run out of yarn, which seems likely, I may rip it all out and do the baby size, and it might actually come out fine. So the thing that I'd heard about mohair is that when you use it with, when you marl it with another yarn, it's not going to change your stitch gauge. it's not going to change your tension. So I just figured I could make this exactly the same as the one that I made for Christmas and it would come out fine. But I'm wondering actually if that's the reason why this one is looking big, because of the mohair. But we'll see. Yeah, so this first part obviously is just normal rib, 2x2 rib, and then I've only done a few rows of the brioche, which I'm doing in 2 colors, and you can't really make out the pattern yet. But this I am making to match that vest that I had made previously. It just looks really big. Anyway, so that's that there. See if I can get it hanging. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so that is everything that I have on the needles. Continuing with talking about things that I have been working on, but moving away from the realm of knitting, I have finally tried spinning, which is something that I have been wanting to try for a while now. What I really would like to do is to take a proper class at the Hand Weavers and Spinners Guild of Victoria, but with everything that has been going on, like I said, I'm still sort of avoiding going out into the world unless I have to, or at least until I get my booster shot, which is about less than a week away. I really want to take a proper class and do that, and I really wanted to try on a spinning wheel, but since I have had to keep pushing back taking that class, I just thought, well, I should just do the smart thing and get a drop spindle and try spinning on a drop spindle, because it's cheaper and it's more accessible and I can do it myself at home with the help of YouTube videos. So that is what I've done. I found one of my uncles has a 3D printer, and that's his hobby. He's really into it. He's printed so many things and he's always offering to print things for people. So I went to Thingiverse and I found a pattern, design, recipe, I don't know what you call it. I found I'll just call it a pattern. I found a pattern for a Turkish spindle or a cross arm spindle. And I wanted the Turkish spindle because I really like how they come apart. So I found one there, and I'll put, again, the link for this and for everything that I've talked about will be in the YouTube description below, and on my my website, blog site. So yes, so I found a pattern for a Turkish spindle and I got him to print it for me. So he printed that a while ago, actually. I think I collected it after I had filmed the previous episode. And he'd printed it a week or two before that, maybe a week before that. And I only had to go spinning on it maybe a week ago. So this is my first attempt. Oops. Very sloppy, as you can see there, very inconsistent. I am using merino roving that I had bought to make a couple of blankets a few years ago, and it's actually the photo that is in my credits. That's the blanket that I've made out of this roving, but it's not intended for spinning, but I have lots of it. I have a blanket's worth that I'm not going to turn, that I don't want to turn into another blanket. So I just thought, what the hell, I'll give it a go. And as you can see, this is so thick and thin. I'm just very inconsistent, but it was still pretty fun to do. So that was my first attempt. I have looked up videos on, you know, drafting, which is how you pull out the fibers so that they're the thickness that you want the yarn to be, something like that. But I'm finding this roving really hard to work with, so I don't even know what I'm really doing. Short forward, short backward, long draw, it's all still a little bit of mumbo jumbo to me. Like when I watch the videos, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, that makes sense. But then when I'm doing it, I end up just like pulling it however I can to get what I can. But anyway, this one, I hadn't actually watched any videos for months and months and months. I was just like, oh yeah, I remember what they all said, and I just went for it. And you know, I got something out of it. But then after this one, I was like, okay, I really need to go back and watch and learn about what I'm supposed to be doing. So I watched a few videos and I had a second attempt, which worked much better, and I also learned how to properly wind onto the spindle. So with this, you're meant to do like 2 over 1 under, 2 over 1 under, 2 over 1 under. And I had done that on the first one, but it was kind of just all over the place. In this one, I, you know, tried to make it neater, and it does look so much better. So if you want to compare the two there. And while this one is still very inconsistent, it still has, you know, a lot of thick and thin, and it's not a consistent weight all the way through. It is much better than what I had done previously. So with this one, I had pre-drafted it before I spun it as well, and I think that did help. Actually, I pre-drafted half of it and the other half I left undrafted, and I did find the pre-drafted one easier to work with. I should also say that each of these are about 5 grams worth of yarn of roving. So I think I will do another 5 grams worth, and then I'm going to try plying them together. So the idea is, so this makes a center pull ball. So once I'm ready to ply them together, I'll have all of my little balls, and I'll just start from the center of it, which is what's wrapped around the bottom of the shaft here. And ply them together. So I do have to remember these singles, I am twirling the spindle clockwise. So when I ply them together, I have to twirl it anti-clockwise. And now that I have shown you what that looks like on the spindle, I can show you the magic of the Turkish spindle, which is the reason that I bought it. So that one has obviously already been taken off. This one, so that I can get it ready for the next one, you just pull off the shaft. Pull out one arm, slide one arm out. And then slide it off the other arm. And there is your beautiful center pull ball. No need to do any extra winding to have that ready to work with. And there are all the pieces of the Turkish spindle. So yes, very excited to finally be playing with that, and excited to be making my own yarn, and hopefully it's good for something. Not this one. I'm probably just gonna, after I ply the 3 strands together, I'll probably just knit a tiny little swatch and have it as like a memento of my first attempt at yarn. But I mean, ultimately, obviously I do want to be able to spin that blanket's worth of yarn into usable yarn that I can make into maybe even a sweater if it's not too terrible. So that's pretty exciting there. So that is my Multicrafty adventure. Next up, I just wanted to talk a little bit at community. So one of the reasons that I started this vlog was because I don't have a knitting group, and I don't have knitting friends. I have a crochet friend, I have a sewing friend who knits, and my aunt is an amazing crafty Wonder Woman. She knits and quilts and sews, and she just does lots of things, and I never know how she finds time to do it all, and everything that she makes is just amazing. Anyway, I don't have like knitting people in my life really, and I'm not super great at reaching out to people or participating in forums on Ravelry and that kind of thing. Like, I do it here and there, but then I often just get very like, the conversation just moves way too fast and I get lost, and I'll make one post and then I'll completely lose track of the thread and I'll never post again. And I'll do that maybe once every few months or once every year or something like that. But I find it, I find it hard to really connect with people. So one of the reasons that I started this vlog was to help build my confidence in talking about what I'm doing and sharing what I'm doing and talking to other people about this amazing craft. So building confidence, and I was hoping that it would help me find or build a community for myself. And it has done that. So I think it was towards the end of last year, I was invited to join a group of Aussie podcasters. So they get together every now and then and have a virtual knit night, and I've managed to attend 2. I think they have had 4 Zoom knitting sessions since I was invited into the group, and I've been able to attend the last 2, and it's been really nice. Obviously it would be much nicer to be able to, you know, have an in-person group, but it's so lovely just being able to sit there with your knitting and do your knitting and like have people around you working on their knitting and just talking about knitting and all sorts of things. It was really lovely, and I'm really grateful to have been invited to that group, and I'm really happy that I have this opportunity to get to know these other Aussies from, you know, all around the country and hopefully make friends. So I have started watching some of their vlogs as well. The thing with me though is I'm a huge binge watcher, and it's kind of like how I was saying before, when I'm searching for a pattern, I have to look at everything that falls into, you know, the categories of what I want, because I don't want to miss out. It's kind of the same when I'm watching a vlog or listening to a podcast. I don't want to miss anything. So whenever I start listening to or watching something new, I have to go back to the very, very beginning, and I have to watch from the very, very beginning. So I haven't gotten through many of their vlogs, but I have been watching them since towards the start of the year. So the ones that I've watched that I'd like to recommend so far is Three Cats Yarn, who is Mel. She is formerly Down Under Dyer, and obviously Down Under Dyer, Three Cats Yarn. She dyes beautiful yarn, Aussie yarn, Aussie wool. Yeah, and I really want to get her highlighter set, but I'm trying to not buy yarn without an immediate purpose. I kind of know what I want to use it for, but because I have so many other projects that I have already planned out and have to make, and I want to knit through some of my stash before I add to it, I'm not letting myself buy it yet. But check her out. She's got some beautiful yarns and a lovely vlog that I think she started about a year ago from memory. So that is Mel of Three Cats yarn. The next one is Cat of Oliphant Cat. So she is a designer and teacher. Both of them, Mel and Cat, I believe, are in New South Wales. Yes, so Kat I started off watching her videos that were a tour through her knitted wardrobe, and she had so many knitted items that were her own, which I don't have. I have like 2 garments that I've knitted for myself, because most things that I knit are gifts for other people. So I've said this before, but I want to knit more things for myself that I get to keep and show off. So it was an inspiration to see how much Kat had of her own in her wardrobe. And she said that that wasn't even including the wardrobes of her husband and her kids, and she had so much there, which was really amazing to see. The other thing about Kat that I was really drawn to is that she's a fellow Filipina. And I actually didn't pick up on it immediately when I was watching her, but I was watching down on the TV downstairs, and after a while my partner came over and asked if she was Filo, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, because I'm really bad at telling what nationality or ethnicity anyone is, and I'm like, I have no idea. Why do you think she looks Filo? And he said yes, and I went and looked on her Instagram profile, and she did say it there that she's a Filipina like me, which I don't know if I've ever mentioned before. I was my family's from the Philippines. I was born in the Philippines, but I came here when I was 3, and I've only been back once. And I can't speak the language, sadly, but I can understand a lot more than I can speak. But I just thought it was just really nice to have that extra little connection with Kat. And it's funny, after he said that as well, I started noticing things about her mannerisms that I either recognize in myself or in my sisters. And now I'm like, yeah, she's Philo. She's Philo. Yeah, so again, highly recommend going to check her out. Oh, I do also want to mention she does do tech editing, and I need to reach out to her and ask about those services, because I have started thinking about finally doing my own designs, which was another reason that I wanted to start this vlog, because I was hoping it would motivate me to work on my own designs, and I hadn't yet. So now I think I actually will start. Anyway, moving on, the next one that I want to recommend is Fiberbound. So Fiberbound is Alexandra, who is based in South Australia. She has a beautiful podcast. She has a lot of followers. I think all 3 of these that I've mentioned so far started last year. Alexandra did have, she had been doing Vlogmas for a few years already, so it's just the podcast that's new. So I believe also they all have the same handles as I believe their channels are also the same as their Instagram handles. So if you want to look them up, you should be able to find them on Instagram at Three Cats Yarn, Oliphant Cat, and Fiberbound. Yeah, so yeah, Alexandra is a huge sock knitter. Last year at least she was doing a knit along that was a sock a month, and on top of that she had other socks going as well as other projects, and she was just really lovely to watch. And the last one that I want to mention is Hannah of Rosehip Island, who is another yarn dyer. She is in Tasmania. So I've yet to watch a fellow Victorian, but yes, Hannah of Rosehip Island is in Tasmania, and she dyes yarn, and her one has been going for quite a long time. So I think her first episode was in 2015. So I still have a long way to go, which I'm really happy about. I like having a lot to watch. I like being able to watch. I like binging. So I like being able to watch a whole chunk of one person's content, which means that I'm never often up to date, but usually what I do is I find a new vlog, I watch everything that they've ever put out, and then I find someone new and start again. But what I want to try to do now is, after I've watched a really long series, I want to go back and watch the more recent episodes of all the other ones that I've watched, and then go find someone new. And that way I'll be at least a little bit up to date and can join in with knit-alongs and things, because that's one thing when I go back and watch all of these old ones, is they have these knit-alongs and I'm like, oh, I really wish I could join that, but it's long finished, so I can't. So I really do want to make more effort to stay current. Anyway, I mentioned that because both Fiberbound and Rosehip Island have had knit-alongs on their vlogs that I would have liked to join. So once I get up to date with Hannah of Rosehip Island, then I'll go back and catch up on anything that I've missed since I finished the big binge, and then start on someone new. But the other really fun thing about Hannah's is that you get to see, if you watch from the start like I do, you get to see her start her journey of setting up her yarn dyeing business, which is really interesting to see. So initially it's really just about knitting, but she talks about how she has these interests in other areas of crafting and fiber art. So aside from sewing project bags and other sewing, she also mentions spinning and dyeing. And then it just sort of progresses. She starts dyeing more. She goes to a market back in Sweden where she is from and tries to sell some yarn, and eventually starts her own Etsy store back here in Australia. So it's really nice to sort of see that develop and grow. So that is Rosehip Island, and I am still in 2016 for that one, so I'll be watching Hannah for a while. The next segment is Stat Chat. So now that I am coming close to the end of this sock knitting journey, and after having watched especially Alexandra and Hannah, who knit a lot of socks, I thought I'd focus my Stat Chat on socks. So I had a look through my Ravelry, and prior to 2021 I had knit 5 pairs of socks. I am including in that one pair that I started in, I think, 2018, and I finished in 2021. But because I finished it early in 2021 and I had knit a lot of it prior to 2021, I'm counting it in that 5. So 5 socks pre-2021. And then I did 5 socks in 2021. And now with this Sock KAL that I'm doing, I'm doing 5 versions. I've nearly finished this one. So that's 5 socks in 2022 so far. So 5, 5, and 5. And it just seems to be more socks as time goes on. So that is 15 socks, pretty much 15 socks finished. And I think I am finally turning into a sock knitter, which I never thought I would become, but here we are. Yeah, so aside from these 5, there are other socks that I have planned already to knit, but I think I do need a break from socks after I finish this one here. Like I said, I've kind of been racing towards the finish line for this because I've been pretty eager to get it done and sort of do a comparison of all of the different techniques and fits and everything. So yeah, I need to take a break, but it has been really good having just this kind of simple knitting that I can do when I'm tired or I just don't want to think about it. So that's been really great. So one thing, I never thought I'd really get into sock knitting, and then 2, I never really thought I'd make vanilla socks because I really like doing socks with patterns. And I still do. I still prefer knitting socks with patterning, but this was a really good exercise doing vanilla socks with all of the different sock techniques and trying to do all the customizations. And I feel like it's just given me a much better understanding of socks. So now when I go back to doing patterned socks, I should be able to bring that knowledge with me. I do think I probably will do more vanilla socks, but they're definitely not, I just don't find them as enjoyable as patterned socks. And I've heard a lot of people say that they do vanilla socks in self-striping because it keeps them engaged and it keeps that level of interest. It maintains that for them. But for me, I really don't feel like it was enough. And it could be because, I've knit 2 socks in the same self-striping colorway of this one, 2 socks in that same self-striping colorway. So maybe that was just too much to do in the same yarn and wasn't enough to keep me interested. But I do think I will continue to do vanilla socks alongside doing patterned socks, because like I said, it is nice just having something that's that simple and that I can just easily pick up and go mostly without having to think about it. So yes, that is that. Getting to the end of this episode now, I have to say that I am obviously most grateful for my newfound knitting community. I love that I am connecting with other knitters in Australia. When I have gone to their Zoom knit nights, I am a pretty shy, introverted person, so I don't say much, and I'm still trying to get to know who everyone is. Not all of them have been to the knit nights that I have gone to. There have only been a handful at each one, but it was nice going to one after having watched a few and really being able to like recognize who I'm talking to. So that was lovely, and I'm excited about having all of their vlogs to go through, and I'm excited about spending more time with them and getting to know them. So yes, that brings us to the end of this episode of Bobolog. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you spending your time here with me today. Yes. If you like this episode, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would also love to hear from you if you have any feedback about this episode or about any of my previous episodes, or if you have any comments about the things that I am working on, if you want to share what you're working on, I would love to hear that too. Have you ever tried to do custom fitting on socks, or do you find that standard sort of socks work for you? I had always found that they'd worked for me. I'd never actually had an issue, but I'm finding it really fascinating to learn that they could fit better, and it will be really interesting to see how this works out. So if you've done the same thing, or if you're curious about it, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below or send me a message on Instagram or on Instagram or Ravelry. I am on Instagram at Platypus Knitting, and I am on Ravelry as Bobby Olan, which is my name. And yes, that's all I have to share with you today. I'll see you in another couple of weeks. Fare thee well.